You said you were 26. You haven't been out into the world that long.
That's awfully presumptive.
You're getting away from my point.
No, I'm not getting away from... No,
English.
hang on. On raw numbers, more people are jailed for speech violations in the UK than they are in Russia. They are.
That's partly because...
I'm so angry, I forgot.
Do you understand that I don't like Vladimir Putin? Do you understand? Cultural and population churn has changed...
Answer a question.
I am. There's no need to be rude.
You spend the whole evening rubbishing the country. I'm rather surprised you want to live here.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching my mate Connor Tomlinson school an entire room of cringe, annoying, and condescending liberal journalists, and it is very satisfying to see. There are many interesting things brought up in this conversation, including a bit of a deep dive that we're going to get into about the whole birth rate crisis. So with that, Connor's doing some good work. His links will all be below for you guys to check out. Make sure to like the video on the way in, guys. That does really help out with the algorithms, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get into it.
America is a different place now. So I want to ask you, how do you view the situation in America in tandem with your own worldview? Let's talk about what you believe. I believe you, as I said before in my introduction, call yourself a revolutionary Catholic Zoomer, is that right?
In that order. Yeah.
Okay, what exactly does that mean? And I understand you've got some rather strident views on things like immigration, on female participation in the workforce. Why do you think that would offer a better future for young people in countries like ours?
Well, my view of female participation in the workforce is that currently, and I think you might agree with me on this, is that liberal capitalism cannibalizes far too much of your private life. So when young women report in surveys, I think it's 92% of them by the new social covenant in late 2023, that they want to have a family, but they feel that they can't afford it because the housing's too expensive and their job takes up too much time.
Why is that only their problem, though?
When did I say it was their problem?
But it's not. But you're saying a survey said that women say but it's not only a woman's problem if a couple can't afford it.
No, but I'm saying they want it. So the problem is with the way that the economy is set up. If they can't afford it and they can't take the time off work to do so, we should absolutely facilitate their ability to have the families they say they want. In terms of views on migration, yes, because
stronger paternity leave legislation would sort that out. Would you agree?
I'm not necessarily sure.
Why not?
Because dependent care obligations in the early years of motherhood usually fall on the mother.
Usually.
Because of the economic side.
Well, no, because it's not just because of the economic side. I mean, okay, I can't breastfeed. That's kind of important.
No, but I can.
Lots of women can't.
Yeah, no, I know, no, but that's what I'm saying.
Lots of women can't and don't as well. They still have children.
But the majority can and do. An exception doesn't disprove a rule. That's what I'm saying. And if women are saying they want families, but it's not flexible enough, then we should make it more flexible, right?
Indeed, by allowing their partners to take more paid time off work.
But there's been quite a few surveys that say that it's a rough split. There's a third of women that would like to work flexibly, a third of women that would like to go back to work full time, and a third of women that would like to take time off work entirely to raise their own kids.
What are the figures for men?
The survey didn't measure that, but I would imagine it's a lot. I would imagine it's a lot lower.
Sorry,
I think we've gone down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Let me cite some statistics that I was looking up earlier on today, and these are the government statistics that they published on International Women's Day, which was just the other day, and it was essentially that if they could coax 5% more women back into the UK workforce every single year, this country would be £125 billion richer
Is
in
that
the
good
future.
For children, though?
What do you think?
No.
All right, why?
Because a child's best quality of care is when their mother and their father are close to them. So if you...
what makes you feel...
It's not feeling. It's Erica Commissar's done some fantastic work on this, by the way. Blood cortisol for a baby when you take them away from their mother, because obviously they're most used to their mother's heartbeat, their mother's voice, and the like. It spikes and it remains quite high throughout adolescence. So if we, just one example, if we want what's best for the child, then keep them with their biological birth parent. And if the mum wants to stay at home, I don't see why the government should again be cajoling them to get back to the workforce, because we should be doing what's best for families rather than, in your framing, what's best for the GDP. Like, I don't think we should sacrifice people's, let's say, quality of life and their preferred choices just for the sake of growing the economy in an abstract fashion.
The old graph go up mentality. Graph go up, make the society gooder. But in terms of the conversation about how to address the birth rate crisis, and in terms of the conversation about paternity leave and maternity leave, there are some very interesting things that don't get brought up here. There have been many different initiatives that have been implemented by various different governments to try and tackle this issue. And when they talk about paternity leave and maternity leave in particular, all of the most robust systems in the entire world, like Sweden and Finland and Canada and even the United Kingdom, have some of the lowest birth rates in the whole entire world. This just doesn't work. And when we talk about initiatives that have been done by governments over recent decades, there are some pretty interesting ones that have happened. Japan had a government-sponsored dating and AI matchmaking system where they threw serious money into AI-powered dating apps run by local governments. Some towns even organized mixers and matchmaking parties complete with snacks, icebreaker games, and gentle government encouragement to settle down. And we should be aware right now that Japan and South Korea have the lowest birth rates in the entire world. And this is an extinction level crisis for them.
We are very simple people with very small penis. Mr. Horse penis is especially small.
So small.
We cannot achieve much with so small penis. But you, Americans, wow, penis so big penis.
Well, I guess it is a pretty good size.
Denmark had the Do It for Denmark campaign, where a travel company, which was loosely endorsed by the government, launched a hilarious national campaign saying Do It for Denmark, encouraging couples to take romantic holidays to conceive. They would give out baby-making vacation packages, including wine, hot tubs, and ovulation calendars. And if you had a baby 9 months later, you could win more vacations, baby gear, or even prizes for the best timed conception. Russia has the National Day of Conception, where a specific region of Russia declared September the 12th the conception day. Couples were even given the day off work to go home and make babies. And if you give birth 9 months later on Russia Day, June 12th, you could win cash, refrigerators, washing machines, and even a new car. Even Iran had a government-sponsored dating app. It was state-approved and called Hamadam, or Companion. It wasn't like a casual Tinder setup. It required lengthy questionnaires and approval by advisors, and had a focus on morality and long-term marriage. And if you matched, you could also get counseling and official support to push you towards marriage and family. Now, Hungary are one of the cases that actually did see a slight upswing, or at least stagnation, in the declining birth rates. They offered interest-free loans up to 30,000 euros to married couples, but the catch, you had to have a child within 5 years to avoid repaying it. If you have 3 kids, loan completely forgiven, and you can get an income tax exemption for life if you're a mum with 4 or more kids. I think this was a really good step and something that the West should look at implementing. Singapore has had some interesting ones. They also had the Romancing Singapore Festival, which is a month-long festival every February with government-backed events like moonlit boat rides, dance classes, love poetry readings, and they even created a dating reality TV show promoting compatible matches as public entertainment. Now, did any of these work? Nope, not really. And that's because they're getting it all wrong. They're completely missing the point. Incentivizing young career women to have a family and then have a little bit of time off actually can do the opposite. It'll create a false sense of security for these young women where they think that they can just work at their career until they're 35 years old and then eventually have a buzzer beater baby and the government will look after them for a little while. And then oftentimes this just doesn't pan out. And so trying to incentivize young, ambitious, career-minded women to go on a cruise and find love or to conceive on a certain day just isn't going to work. Now, the one country who actually has managed to keep their birth rates up really high is Israel. But this is due to a number of factors. First of all, they have people all around them who want to wipe them off the face of the earth. And even Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader, said that his greatest weapon was the woman's womb. So they kind of realized that they need to keep up. They also have the Orthodox Jewish community, which tend to have many, many kids. So they've got that religious aspect to the culture. Furthermore, they've got a very strong national identity. So people feel like they want to have kids to help out the national cause. The government has also put in place an unlimited IVF program. They have stronger family and cultural structures where the grandparents will look after the kids a little bit more. And then this is also nestled in with various different government support policies for family. And one last example of this that I want to give, which I really do find an interesting one, maybe not one that could be immediately replicated, was Romania, who increased their birth rate from 1.9 to 3.7 in the 1960s. They did this by making abortion almost universally illegal and also banning contraception. Now, this had some pretty negative downstream effects for a really poor country like Romania. But all this to say, the Western world and Western leaders are looking at this completely wrong. You can't just throw money and government subsidies and programs at this problem. It's largely a cultural and religious problem that governments are too scared to actually fix. Because the way that our societies are currently structured, it would be almost impossible to get elected on such a message. Anyways, let's carry on.
I'm curious, Connor, as to what you said. You were 26. You haven't been out into the world that long. So
That's awfully presumptive.
26, right? I mean, in 26 years, I'm very curious as to the 3 or 4 issues that have really driven the way you think, because that is something I think we as journalists and we as perhaps adults don't understand. Why do you think the way you do? The 3 or 4 issues that happened that have actually formulated your position.
And those are immigration, family.
Yeah, immigration, lockdown, and climate change, I think. Immigration because I went to school in the most diverse cohort in British history, and I can see how people's cultural background and their family background influences their likelihood of buying into the Western story or the British story or liberal democracy. So I went to school with a bunch of really nice Nigerian kids, for example. Interpersonally, they're all very nice. But then the Nigerian kids would have disputes with the Ghanaian kids. And then the African kids would have disputes with Caribbean kids. And the black kids would have disputes with the white kids. And so there's a kind of factionalism that builds up. And you just notice it on the lunch tables. And so this might affect politics as we go along. As we mentioned civil war earlier, for example, right? David Betts, who works at King's College London, has been doing the rounds in interviews recently. And he said the kind of catalyst he's most worried about for civil conflict is increased ethnic and cultural stratification, and then a kind of identity grievance politics that pits people against one another, which is, it was the narrative that came out of the death of George Floyd, for example, the critiques of white racism and white supremacy. And if you drill that into the heads of people who are second generation from other countries, and you tell them that actually you can't be friends with this person because there's a secret hatred of them at all times, that's going to increase antagonisms.
I'd just say to this, I live in a Welsh village.
Yes.
Where there are antagonisms between the Welsh and the Anglos.
Yep.
And it's been going on since 1282.
Yes. That means we shouldn't. No, it's not fine.
Yeah.
It's not. No, it's not. How is it?
The Welsh might disagree.
No, pause.
They can throw buns at it. I'm a deracinated Welshman.
Hang on. That's fine for you to say it's not a problem from your Welsh village. That is an intranational conversation. That doesn't mean we need to.
Not really. I don't think the Welsh would say it like that.
The United Kingdom, the British Isles.
They don't believe in it.
Okay. It's a landmass that we're locked in, whether we like it or not, right? Okay, does that mean we import, does that mean we import ethnic and religious prejudices from other parts of the world? For example, the recent reignition of the conversation around Pakistani Muslim rape gangs in the UK, right? That is a completely preventable problem. It is.
I think you're getting away from my point.
No, I'm not getting away from
it. No. You've raised years, and we're okay with it.
No. You've realised for a moment there that you've picked an example that is landlocked to the UK. So we're stuck with that, right? I agree, we're stuck with it. I don't think the Welsh and the English are going to take up arms against each other anytime soon, thankfully, because I wouldn't want to see Wales crushed. But that does not mean, that because we have a localised conflict, we import other conflicts from around the world when we know they can happen. So that is part of the immigration issue. The final issue is the climate change one. We've spent a hell of a lot of money on, or I say we, the government has spent a hell of a lot of money on unproductive remedies to climate change issues. I helped write a paper that said, here's how you can fund nuclear power without relying on the Chinese investment, because we let them buy up our nuclear power plants because the government funds it. You can instead put the burden on the energy companies that are actually going to make the money from it. Did they listen? No, of course.
So the opening question there seemed to be a passive-aggressive dig at his age, and it's also fallacious because it doesn't actually contend with his arguments.
It's 26, right? In 26 years, we as perhaps adults.
He might be a young guy, but he makes good arguments. And I would agree with Connor that immigration and lockdown and climate change are extremely formative problems for young people these days. But I would also say that the dating, mating, marriage, and just pair bonding in general crisis that we are seeing is also one that is extremely important and particularly relevant to our generation. But on the issue of immigration, for this guy to compare the conflict between the Welsh and the English to the fact that England is slowly becoming a Muslim country just goes to show how deeply these people have their head dug in the sand.
My name's Abdul Shakur. I'm British. I've been Muslim for a week. Alhamdulillah.
My name's Abdul Rahim. I've been Muslim for 3 years. Alhamdulillah.
Hello, my name's James. I'm British and I'm Muslim for 6 months. Alhamdulillah.
My name's Abdullah. I've been Muslim for 10 years and I'm British. Alhamdulillah.
Right.
The problem of immigration has so deeply divided that country. It is a divided nation. And this is the kind of thing that dismantles an entire civilization. I mean, you go to parts of England at the moment, and I've been there and I've witnessed these places. It literally feels like you're in a third world country. This was a place that used to be the pinnacle of civilization for a little while, but now it is a place that is in managed decline. And soon enough, it will cease to be Britain anymore. On to the next question, which is an odd one.
Connor, can you explain your theory of free speech to the late Alexei Navalny?
Pardon?
Can you explain your theory of free speech to the late Alexei Navalny?
As in, because he was murdered by Putin. Well, murdered, obviously. In prison.
Okay, as in, why didn't J.D. Vance, who you referenced, why didn't he address that? Why didn't he address the fact that you could say everything you've said here tonight at the Valdai conference in Russia, and people like Alexei Navalny get murdered? And can you reflect on the difference between British society and British free speech and what happens to people who dare to speak in Russia?
I can reflect on those two things. First of all, I would assume that Vance is using, and the Trump administration are using it as a strategic bargaining chip to stay stum to try and get Putin to the negotiating table. We're going to... Sorry. I'm not disagreeing that he's going to absolutely take advantage. I'm just trying to get in their mentality.
Wondering if they have a bargaining strategy with...
That's my assumption. Yeah. As far as free speech in Russia, yeah, it doesn't exist. But also the problem here is that we also have stringent speech laws that were applied where they shouldn't have. I mean, on
but
raw
we'd all be in jail for being
on raw
here
numbers, more people.
If we were in Russia.
Hang on.
Even the audience.
Hang on. On raw numbers, more people are jailed for speech violations in the UK than they are in Russia. They are.
That's partly because people don't open
No.
their mouths.
That's just on the raw numbers. Now.
Or the
you
cost is death.
No.
Wait. We've got to get into this. Which numbers are you using?
What about people who've been murdered?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I don't.
Yeah, but surely that's an idiotic response.
How is it an idiotic response?
Okay, let's just get the microphone to John so you can...
Sorry, but what about the people who've been murdered?
Those things are bad. Of course, the Russians murdering their political opposition are terrible.
How many people have been murdered in Britain?
Peter Lynch.
Sorry?
Peter Lynch. Do you know that name? Peter Lynch. Does it mean anything?
No.
Okay. Peter Lynch was a 61-year-old granddad who stood outside one of the riots last summer, where people were, of course, engaging in all sorts of horrible behaviour, like trying to set light to an asylum hotel. Peter Lynch did none of that. He shouted that the police called them traitors and held up a sign about the World Economic Forum. One of the conspiracy theorists you think is pretty wrong. He was sent to prison for 2 years, I believe it was, had a heart condition and hung himself in jail because he was afraid of being attacked.
That's not murder.
No, because he was afraid of being attacked by fellow inmates who Keir Starmer had labelled them all as far-right racists. So he was put in the conditions that led him to take his own life. I think that is wrong. I also, of course, think that Russia is awful and I would not want to bloody live there.
Okay, so politically, though, what I'm talking about, for example, people I've met...
Yes.
And we're critical of Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Anna... I'm so angry, I forgot.
Do you understand that I don't like Vladimir Putin? Do you understand that?
No, but I don't understand, that you're applying your mind to the following. Anna Politkovskaya and Natasha Esmerova, two great journalists, critical of Putin, in particular his war in Chechnya. Thirdly, Boris Nemtsov, and then Alexei Navalny.
Yeah.
In order, poisoned then shot,
yes.
shot, poisoned, and poisoned again, yes. Dead.
All terrible.
So these are people who challenge Putin's political power,
yes.
Not like the pensioner you're talking about.
Yes.
These are people who've all been murdered. There are many, many more of them. And it seems to be absurd that you are highlighting weaknesses and bad spots in our record, while completely ignoring the serial killing by the killer in the Kremlin.
Because the title is Democracy in Danger, and Russia isn't a democracy. So the point being, how am I?
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to fix any of that. I'm pointing out that if you want to preserve a democracy in the UK, these are the inherent flaws in it, and we need to address them. Just because Putin is a nutcase tyrant who murders journalists does not mean that it is also unjust for the UK government to imprison people.
So there's so much smugness going on in this room that it is just painful. Connor is giving thoughtful and intelligent responses to these questions, and he's looking at the breadth of the situation, and he provides real facts while the others are just sniggering and condescending and giving, oh, but Putin bad arguments. Connor never said once that he loves Russian society and that he wishes that the UK would operate more like Russian society, or that he thinks that Putin is the kind of leader that they need in the UK. He never said that. He simply just pointed out the fact that more people are arrested for crimes to do with speech in the UK than are in Russia. But my favorite part of that bit, when the guy says, oh, I'm so angry. I was so angry that I forgot what I was saying.
I'm so angry I forgot.
I mean, brother, calm down. You don't need to be there fuming with rage about somebody having a difference of opinion to you. That is not a flex at all. That just shows that you have a slight issue with emotional incontinence.
I'm so angry I forgot.
I mean, ironically here, despite their jabs at his age, it seems as though Connor is the only adult in the room. Now let's watch the last exchange where we see yet another unhinged argument from emotion.
Thank you. My question is to Connor. Is there another country in the world, Connor, in which you would prefer to live? And if so, why don't you move there?
Well, okay. So let's. Well, I should let you respond to that, Connor, first of all, and then we'll get to the other questions.
Because one of my chiefest complaints is that the cultural and population churn has changed.
Answer the question.
I am. There's no need to be rude. No. I am. No. Hang on. I'm saying the reason I'm saying no.
The reason. Name a country.
No. He has to let him respond to. We're talking radical empathy.
Yeah. Thank you. The reason I'm saying no is because even though I don't think things are being run very well in this country at the moment, I would miss my family. I would miss the roads that I know.
Sir, may I ask you, if this was a gentleman of Pakistani origin who was complaining about some of the
institutional racism,
institutional racism, would you be saying to him, sir, if you don't like it, you can bugger off elsewhere?
No, my question is because I.
No, you wouldn't.
No, answer the question, sir.
Wish is proud of it, and you've spent the whole evening rubbishing it. And so it seems a perfectly fair question: is there some other country of the world?
So people
think is preferable.
People who have criticism to this country, even if they were born here and they love the area, they love their family and that here, if they have criticisms of the way it's run, they should just up sticks and leave. Is that?
No, of course the criticisms of you spent the whole evening rubbishing the country. So I'm rather surprised you want to live here.
Okay. We've dealt with that. Thank you.
So I don't even need to explain to you guys why what we just saw was a completely unhinged appeal to emotion and just fallacious argument. You can only imagine how easily this guy would be dismantled with his own logic if we dug into his worldview a little bit and his political views and his potential criticisms over the Tories, for example, assuming that he is a Labour voter or even vice versa. You could just as easily say to him, well, if you have all of these problems about the government when these people were in power, then you should just get out of here. But anyways, enjoyed that exchange. Make sure to check out Connor's links below, guys. Like the video. If you would be so kind, subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.